Welcome to our 6th of this year's collaborations with Riot Games for Latin America. If you want to catch these guides in Spanish, then be sure to check out their channel here. When it comes to learning how to lane effectively, most players immediately look for trading tips so that they can kill their opponents to win the matchup. That's definitely useful, but the best players in the world know that the most consistent way to crush your opponents is to manipulate minion waves so that all situations go in their favor. In this guide, we'll be going over the 3 different types of wave manipulation tactics that you need to know. By the end of the video, you'll know exactly how to execute them, when to use them, but most importantly, when not to use these wave tactics as well. Everyone wants to know the best way of crushing their opponents every single game. We'll definitely be covering those kinds of tips in this guide. But what the best players in the world focus on more often is minimizing their mistakes. These wave tactics can oftentimes come with big drawbacks, so it's very important that you know them ahead of time. That way, things are much less likely to go wrong in your games. Okay, so the 3 wave manipulation tactics that you need to know are fast pushing, freezing, and slow pushing. Now, if we were to rank the order on how effective each of these are, fast pushing is the weakest, freezing is the second strongest, and slow pushing is more often than not the strongest wave tactic you can execute. So, let's break down their strengths and weaknesses, starting with fast pushing. This tactic is pretty self-explanatory. In order to execute it, all you have to do is push the wave as quickly as possible. That's it. There are 2 cases in which you'll want to fast push the wave. The first case is when you want the wave at your opponent's tower for absolutely any reason. For example, the enemy Talon roaming towards bot warrants a fast push, so you can try to deny some farm before he gets back to lane, and to also try and score a turret plate while his tower is undefended. The other major reason that you'd want to fast push is to get yourself out of lane as quickly as possible. By pushing the enemy wave into the tower, you no longer have any reason to be in lane. This is most useful for when you suspect that you're in danger. For example, your team just got a completely uncontested dragon on the bottom side of the map. If you see that as a top laner, you should probably wonder about the possibility that the enemy team was trying to make a play on you, which is why they weren't in position to contest dragon. Therefore, you'd likely want to fast push the wave to get out of lane as quickly as you can in order to avoid the potential gank coming your way. Okay, so you quickly shove the wave into the enemy's tower. What could be so bad about doing that? Well, you try and think about it. What downsides can you think of that might make fast pushing not ideal to do all the time? Well, its greatest strength happens to also be its greatest flaw. By fast pushing a wave, you're generally only getting 1 minion wave of pressure. That doesn't give you much time to do anything. As an example, Anivia this game got to fast push a single wave uncontested into the enemy Zed's tower. She left lane for a moment, but quickly realized that the next wave was coming in soon. She almost had 0 time to do anything before she had to be back in lane to catch the next wave. Okay, so if the first flaw is that you don't have much time to do anything, then the second flaw is that you're just giving your opponent free farm this way. Imagine a Renekton versus Nasus lane. If all Renekton did was fast push waves, he'd have no time to impact the rest of the map with such small crashes. Not only that, but he's funneling farm into his opponent uncontested. Fast pushing waves is incredibly bad to do when your opponent outscales you. You need to win the lane, and fast pushing doesn't help you do that most of the time. Which brings us to our second wave tactic that you need to learn, freezing. Freezing is basically allowing your own wave to be at a disadvantage so that the enemy wave overwhelms it. It's pretty easy to set up a freeze. Anytime that your own minion wave is at a disadvantage, all you have to do is last hit minions. That way, you're not disrupting the lead the enemy minions have over yours. You can also consistently set up your own minions to be at a disadvantage by using what is known as a bounce back crash. Whenever you crash a wave into the enemy's tower, there are 2 possibilities that can occur. 1, the wave is cleared before their next incoming wave arrives. What this will do is reset the lane completely into a neutral position. The other possibility is what you want to go for, if you're looking to achieve a freeze. Remember that the incoming wave on both sides are mirrored. You want to crash your wave at the enemy's tower when you're sure that the enemy wave will arrive before yours is fully cleared. Basically, you just want the enemy wave to stall here a bit, killing the minions at their tower. After your wave dies at tower, the waves will crash like this. What comes next is based on the even minion rule. What this means is that whenever there is an even creep wave, then whichever side of the map it is on will push to the opposite side. So in this case, in the long run, the wave pushed toward the blue side of the map, since it was initially closer to the red side's tower. This is the most consistent way that you can force a freeze whenever you want. The even minion rule does add a layer of complexity to maintaining a freeze. You'll soon come to realize that even though your minion wave is at a disadvantage compared to your opponent's wave, it won't actually freeze based on what part of the lane that it's in. This is because freezes generally occur on your side of the lane, which means that your reinforcing wave will arrive first. The added minions will overcome any initial disadvantage your wave may have been under. This is a very useful visual to help you maintain your freezes. When your waves are in the green area, you will only need to have your wave be at a 1 minion disadvantage. When the waves are fighting in the yellow area, your wave should be at a 2 to 3 minion disadvantage, otherwise the even minion rule will break the freeze. And in the red area, your wave should be at least at a 3 to 4 minion disadvantage. That may seem overly complicated, but it really isn't. Once you understand it and start applying it in your games, initiating and maintaining a freeze will become second nature to you. And as a quick reminder, if you want to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at SkillCapped.com. We have professional courses by top players, Smurf commentaries where a challenger player walks you through how to climb out of every rank from Iron to Diamond, and we upload tons of new, exclusive guides to our website each week. In fact, we're so confident you'll improve using our system that if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund, so there's no risk. What are you waiting for? Check out SkillCapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below. What's next though is understanding when you should actually attempt to freeze. So before starting a freeze, you should always ask yourself, is there anywhere else I need to be on the map? By freezing waves, you're committing to sitting in a lane for a very long time. As an example, let's say you're a top laner with half health and mana and 2,000 gold in your inventory. That is very likely not a time that you should be freezing, as you should definitely be looking to visit the shop in the near future. Or another example, let's say the dragon is up. As the ADC, you probably shouldn't be freezing. By doing so, you're hindering your ability to rotate to the objective if the enemy team begins to threaten it. If you've got nowhere to be though, then there will be two situations that you'll want to freeze a wave for. Number one, if you for whatever reason want the wave closer to your side of the lane. More often than not, this decision revolves around junglers. Let's say that your jungler is on the bottom side of the map and you suspect the enemy jungler is topside. Then you may want to be freezing. That way it's much harder to gank you and you can remain safe while your team gets something done on the bot side. The opposite is just as good a reason to do it as well. If you think that the enemy jungler is on the other side of the map and yours is close to your lane, then initiating a freeze could be a great way to set up a gank onto your opponents. The second and main reason that you want to freeze a wave is when you are comfortably stronger than your opponent and you want to deny them farm. Sometimes pushing waves isn't the best way to get leads. If there's nothing else that you can do on the map, then the best thing for you to do to snowball your lead is to freeze versus your opponent. Normally, the player with more minions wins trades. That's because fighting in a minion wave will draw aggro, and during the early stages of the game, minions do a ton of damage. Thus, you usually can't zone your opponents when you have a minion deficit. But if you have a sure lead, you may be able to potentially break that rule. The most brutal thing that you can do to your opponent is to freeze and deny them the ability to walk up and farm. Depending on how far ahead you are, you can potentially deny them a huge amount of gold. Or if you're incredibly ahead, you can even go as far as denying your opponent experience entirely. Because your wave is at a disadvantage, the wave will never push toward your opponent, if you maintain it properly that is, which means you can technically zone someone from gold and experience indefinitely. The only way your opponent can break out of this situation would be to call their jungler to come and help them break the freeze with the numbers advantage against you. But even if they do that, you've still earned a massive lead over them. Number one, they'd be sharing gold and experience as they break the freeze, and number two, you'd be giving your teammates critical information as to where the enemy jungler is. Freezing is absolutely brutal when you can pull it off. In fact, it technically should be the strongest wave tactic in the game. In theory, with a proper freeze, there should be nothing that your opponent can do to stop you. Unfortunately, freezing does come with some pretty hefty downsides, which prevent it from being as strong as it should be. The biggest one being that your opponent is completely free from being in lane. Yes, they may not be able to walk up to the wave and last hit minions, but that means that they can roam around the map since you're not pushing waves into their tower. Their ability to leave lane for free isn't the problem though, it's really your teammates. Think about things from your ally's perspective. Let's say you're a Zed versus a Talon in mid lane. That's a pretty fun matchup, and both players are looking to fight and outplay each other to score a kill. Just as you're hitting 6 and the lane is becoming even more interesting, you notice your bot lane is freezing. If Zed is smart, he will just play safe at his tower. His bot lane is getting ahead. As long as he doesn't lose, the game should be won because of how many resources his own bot lane is denying. But that's not why people queue up to play League of Legends. That Zed wants to have fun, and he wants to be the carry. He wants to be the one with 12 kills who everyone honors at the end of the game. So he'll go in, he'll die to the roam, and then he'll blame his bot lane for freezing. So you have to really think about whether the freeze is worth it before initiating one. Consider how well your lane opponent can roam around the map. If you deem them to not be a threat, then it's totally okay to freeze. But if they have even the slightest kill pressure on your teammates, then a freeze might be too risky to implement since your allies will likely die to their roams. Here's a decent guideline for when we'd advise you to stop freezing in a game. For bot laners, stop freezing when your lane opponents are both level 6. A freeze is not worth the risk of 2 champions with 2 ultimates roaming around the map and killing your team. For mid, stop freezing waves at around level 7. At that point, most mid laners have long-range reliable wave clear anyway. It's almost impossible to maintain a freeze in mid after level 7 anyway. Not only that, but once again, a mid laner with their ultimate and quick access to the entire map is too risky to be left alone roaming. As for top laners, you can probably freeze waves all the way up until level 9 or 10. Top is so isolated from the rest of the map that it's generally not that scary to allow your lane opponents to roam. Of course, these are just general guidelines. It's on you to adapt to your specific game that you're in. For example, if you're playing against a Jinx and a Yuumi bot lane, then it's totally fine to freeze past level 6. They're not going to have effective roams anyway, so who cares if they leave lane? Or in top, if you're against a Quinn, then you may just want to never freeze a wave ever again after she gets level 6. When she's free to do what she wants, Quinn will roam around the map, killing your whole team, regardless of how much you ping her, so you really want to be pressuring her tower as much as you can and trying to force her to stay in lane. Alright, onto our final and strongest wave tactic, slow pushing. This is by far the most utilized wave tactic by high elo players, as they all understand how powerful it is. All it is pushing the minion wave slowly. Then, when it's big enough you crash it. Your end goal is just to create as big of a crash as possible at your opponent's tower. The advantages of a slow push are really easy to understand. Slow pushing is literally just fast pushing, but better. The problem we had with fast pushing was that a single wave at the enemy tower didn't give you much time to do anything. Slow pushing fixes that. By having a big wave at your opponent's tower, you're going to have a lot more time to do things. This can be whatever you want. For example, one of the most common uses of slow pushing is to just recall after the crash. Because it takes your opponent so long to clear the wave, you're able to get back in time before they can crash the wave to your tower. Oh, and remember what we said about bounce backs after a crash? If the wave stalls at the tower after you crash a slow push, then you can force a freeze by coming back to lane with an item advantage. Sion doesn't want the wave frozen against him, so he tries to contest the Aurelion. Unfortunately for him, with her item advantage, she easily disposes of him. This kill was scored not through mechanics, but from Aurelia's previous slow push into the threat of a freeze. This was a perfect example of how to use waves to crush your lane opponent. The other most devastating tactic off of a slow push is setting up a tower dive on your opponent. Killing someone after crashing a big wave into their tower is incredibly punishing. Number 1, you've scored a kill. Number 2, you're denying your opponent a ton of farm while they're respawning. And number 3, you have a massive wave to help you take turret plates to snowball even further ahead. Coordinating a slow push while the jungler is on your side of the map and pinging them to dive is one of the most abused high elo wave tactics by far. You can literally win the game instantly if you manage to pull it off. Sure, in lower elos your junglers may not listen to your call, but it's still good to ask in case they do pay attention. But as we said, you can do anything you want off of a slow push. You can roam to another lane, invade the enemy jungle, set up vision, etc. Anything you attempt to do is far more likely to work out. By crashing a decently sized wave at their tower, your opponent will be forced to stay there, giving you more time for your play to succeed. And that's why slow pushing is the strongest wave tactic of the 3. You get great advantages with very little downside, and the one downside it does have is easy to play around. The only way a slow push could turn out poorly for you is if you mess up during it. It's very important to know that the only difference between a slow push and a freeze is who is in control of the wave. For example, in this case the TF has a slow push going for him, since he's even in health with Syndra and he has the wave advantage. But let's imagine that Syndra randomly landed a crazy good trade onto the Twisted Fate. With him being at such low health and unable to contest the wave anymore, his slow push has just become Syndra's freeze. As we said earlier, freezes can be quite devastating, so this is a complete disaster for TF. So it's important to remember that the advantage of a slow push is all about that crash. You don't have to trade with your opponent while you're crashing a big wave if you don't need to. It's more important to make sure that you actually crash the wave to ensure your advantage. To wrap things up, we want to leave you with a clear message. You don't always have to use the most optimal wave strategy for every single scenario. It's impossible to always do the best play possible every single time. The most important thing to focus on is making sure that you don't use these tactics at the wrong time or mess them up either. Fast pushing and giving a scaling opponent free farm, freezing versus a powerful roamer, or dying while you're slow pushing can all be game-losing mistakes. Hopefully by knowing them ahead of time, you're much less likely to commit those mistakes and make full use of the power of all three strategies. And with that, we'll end things here. Hope you enjoyed, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.